I beg your pardon again for the interruption. Due to some fluctuations with my VPNs connection. Aka the data influx and reflux, blah blah blah. So yeah. So as I mentioned, in part one of this live filming session, the earlier you realize that nobody gives you a flying piece of shite as a dude, as a man. The earlier you realize that, the better. That says, the earlier you realize this, the freer you will you will you know you will be you will become, and you will have the you will have fewer, how should I put it, fewer stones, or I should say fewer setbacks, fewer um obstructions that hold you back, to while you attempt to do your own thing, to walk your own path, your 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 destiny, so to speak. And that brings out the next the next I would say the sub topic for further analysis, further discussion. Yeah. Um yeah, that says, do I believe in the in do I um do I trust or believe in determinism? More or less, yeah, I kind of do, since, like I said, in the first part of this live stream, our current status, our past thought patterns, our genes, even the genes of our ancestors, great 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 grandparents, their genes, their actions, their past, and of course, the past deeds, the past thoughts and behaviors and actions of our parents, led us here, more or less. And even so, you know, their past deeds and thoughts are still making a wave, are still, kind of, more or less, um, still more or less, how should I put it, uh, affects the trajectory of our lives and our future life. But yes, I guess that is I beg your pardon, subject to much more too much more too much more too much more further experimentation and scientific experimentation and analysis and I beg your pardon. But yeah, I just, how should I put it? We can only, try to exert some amount or some extent of control our current thought patterns and therefore, plans of actions. Though, we can only, go so far, with that being said, what else? Yeah. So yeah. So those, even like I said, even those items of the past that have fortunately survived, all those, blood and sweat and wars and conflicts, chaos over the, over its history until the present time, they, can still, you know, more or less create many impacts on, on the lives of those that are living in the present. Say, another example, say, a highly rare coin, can attract, so much attention, so much, and so much, so much attention, so much contention and competition, among many buyers, many, interested parties, say most notably, those that place, bids in an auction, maybe, even in multiple auctions, attempting, to win the bid in order, to buy and then own such item, to I beg your pardon, to rise, to emerge victorious in the of placing bids of bidding in auctions, creating, chain, a bunch of chain reactions, say long distance travels, say early to mid October in potential buyers and bidders, at the scene, during the Hong Kong coin show back there in Hong Kong, and and uh, assuming I do manage, to recover in to recover and regain more strength and more savings in my personal um um you know in my personal finance, then I suppose I assume I might be, making another trip, to the Hong Kong coin show uh again. Yeah, Jesus, why am I starting so much in this live stream? I just, I thought that I might be studying at least fairly less after nearly 2 weeks of not filming a video, speaking my own thoughts and ideas, vocalizing them, not speaking my mind and vocalizing my thoughts for a fairly long period of time. But as you can see, the results have been so far, maybe I wouldn't say less than satisfactory, but at least lower than my or what else? Yeah, what else is there to say? Other than say the best strategy is to kind of the best strategy to kind of cope with life and cope through life is trying to first of all maintain and improve your physical health, and then in turn your mental health, and then spiritual health, and then perhaps then you can then work on say making some real friends, um, who can serve you some use, some benefits, in the long term, instead of short term pleasure, say short term gains. You know, even those those that with whom you share very little in common in terms of mindset, in terms of world views, in terms of ideologies. Though I'm not saying that you should totally reject those that oppose your ideologies as business partners or clients or even friends. But certainly you know um, more often than not, making friends or at least attempting to make